Well, hello there, lovelies, and welcome back to another episode of the Realm of Unknown. I know there's been another little pause in the uploads, and I apologize for that, but unfortunately, as you've noticed through the previous episodes, I am currently in the full swing of senior year here at college, and things are kind of ramping up. I technically end this coming Tuesday, and then graduation is on May 9th and May 10th. So, yeah, I mean, things are just crazy right now, and honestly, it's kind of surreal to think about the fact that I've been here for 4 years now, and, you're just wrapping up, and you just got to move on to the next chapter of your life. So it's definitely a crazy, busy time, and things have been a little hectic and a little overboard when it comes to just everything in general. Classes have been kind of crazy, and especially when it comes to my graphic design courses. I technically, this past Tuesday at the time of recording, have finished my thesis project, and as of right now, I am just finishing up final touches for my portfolio. I'm getting some mock-ups finished, and I'm putting together a small little PDF for presentations for both tomorrow and for the Tuesday that I mentioned for when the official end date is. So we'll see how that goes, and I've definitely got a lot of work ahead of me, and as of right now, I'm recording these podcast segments a little bit out of sync with one another. They're going to be a little spaced out across the next few days as I have free time to record them and get them uploaded. It's weird. I know the upload schedule's been kind of weird. I have episodes that I just need to finish editing and then get out there. I don't know why I keep sitting on them and then recording new ones because it's just not convenient, I guess. I don't know. But I mean, the system's working okay for now, and you guys still seem to come back and listen to a few episodes here and there. And, but yeah, I mean, that's basically it for the update from my end of the, spectrum, I guess. I don't know the correct word for that because I'm talking to a mass crowd, and, I don't see any of you guys, and you don't see me. So we'll see. And I mean, basically, what I want to talk about is for this upcoming few series is more personal experience type stuff. And the main focus is going to be, at least for this episode and possibly the next episode, Laurel Hill Cemetery here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, which is an amazing location, honestly, if you've not been there before. And if you've not visited the city of Philly at any point. It's a little bit out of the way from the main little hub of the city, so it's definitely a stretch that if you want to visit and you are here in the fall, it's a must-see. But otherwise, if you don't see it, it's not a big miss, but it's definitely an interesting thing if you're into this sort of stuff and you're into some more unique locations while visiting a city on, vacation or just a trip, and you have some free time for a day. So I'm going to be talking about Laurel Hill this week or next week again. And on top of that, I recently went on a trip down to Annapolis, Maryland. While also visiting a really, really cool town that my parents were there and introduced me to it because we were going down there for Easter. Called St. Michael's, and I want to do a small little video both on St. Michael's and some of the potential stories surrounding that location, as well as Annapolis, Maryland, because both are really, really old, and it's essentially the equivalent of Philadelphia and places like Germantown, up here, very old sections of the city, and small little rural towns that are not along the outskirts, but are in some cases, especially in St. Michael's, they're a little bit out of the way. So I guess it's more akin to maybe Lancaster for us up here. But I mean, yeah, I just want to talk about those things. I want to talk about some more personal places that I've been to. I have a old mental hospital that I went to when I was really young, and it was abandoned at that point and is now currently not there, and I want to talk about that. So I've got a few things lined up. I've got a battleship that I I've got a battleship that I stayed over back several years ago. I think I was at least like 10 or something at that point. And I was there with my dad, and we were there for Boy Scouts. And I recently went back to visit it during a paranormal investigation. And I just want to talk about that as well. So those will be the next few episodes that I'll be discussing. The rest are kind of just small, little interesting topics that I either am a huge fan of or just interested in, or they're just little small suggestions that I found either on the YouTube page or just through comments on Twitter and Instagram. Speaking of which, those two I'm trying to get more active on. Twitter is still definitely the biggest one if you want to catch me, and maybe send some suggestions my way or comment on a previous episode. That is the best place to catch me up on, and the best place to listen to me is probably either Spotify or Apple iTunes. I record this on Anchor, so if you guys want to check it out, definitely do. It's probably the simplest and most free way to listen to me, but I personally enjoy listening to podcasts on iTunes, so that's just my little preference there. And I'm rambling on because you guys are definitely not here to listen to me just talk about my own little personal views. You're here to listen about ghost stories and spooky little mishaps. So today, without a further ado, I shall introduce you guys and take a deep dive into the world and the fantastical location that is known as Laurel Hill Cemetery here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Okay, and we are back. Real quick, this is technically recorded on a different session than the first little beginning portion of this episode. And I do apologize. You will most likely hear background noise. I'm trying my best to muffle it out as best I can. However, it is currently raining, as it has been for the past several days and will continue, which stinks. I'm also in the city, which is another just blatant way of background noise. And as you can hear from the last episode, there is a train station as it's going by right now. About maybe 10 yards away from my window. It's very, very close by. Maybe even closer. I don't even know. I can't measure. But that's just a quick little forewarning as we step into today's topic, which is the Laurel Hill Cemetery. So if anyone is not familiar with this cemetery, mainly anyone, I guess, who's not, into this topic or knows about historical landmarks around Philadelphia. Laurel Hill is a historical cemetery here in Philadelphia. It was founded back in 1836, and it's actually the second major garden or rural cemetery created in the United States. In 1998, it was officially designated as a historical landmark, which very few cemeteries receive this title, and it's just another little esteem that this cemetery gets. I think I mentioned it in the last session for the first clip, that this place is just beautiful. I know it's a cemetery and all, and it's like death and all that type of stuff, but it's just such a beautiful place, and it's so huge you could just walk around for a while and just take it in. It's got a lot of very unique headstones and unique mausoleums throughout it. And as we go through this, I'm going to try my best to talk about both like the location and the ghost stories. It's a little hard because there's not a whole lot written about this place. Not like in a historical aspect, but more so in the ghost aspect. And the last time I went on the tour with the group for an investigation was in November. So I'm going to try to mix some of my own personal stuff into there as well. But I won't remember all the details, so I apologize. I should have probably written more down back in November, but it was a busy time, and I was not thinking that far ahead. So essentially what Laurel Hill Cemetery is. It was created back again in 1836, way back, by John J. Smith, a actual librarian and editor, and he had a lot of interest and investments in the arboriculture and real estate divisions within Philadelphia, and he was sort of disgraced in a way, in the way that like his daughter sort of wasn't handled with some Philadelphia churchyards. So he was kind of fed up with that, and he sort of wanted there to be a better way to both promote citizenly burials along with creating a rural garden within Philadelphia. So he found this little plot of land about 5 miles north of the main city itself. I think technically nowadays it's still within the city or the city county. But back then the city was not as large as it is today. And what was considered the city borders was much more refined to the more like central location that it is. And essentially, so John purchased this land and he essentially created it into an expansion of what it is today, and it is now a cemetery. And I don't know, to be fair, I don't know entirely all what he went through to just be like, I'm just going to make a cemetery. All I can figure out is that his daughter was not handled properly during burial, and he just didn't approve of how she was just kind of left and like buried in like more public settings. So he created a more elegant one, and I guess that's how it started. It's a little moggy in a way, but I can see where he's coming from in some regards. But the cemetery, he brought in a designer by the name of John Notman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's either Notman or it's literally just not, the word not and man, so I'm just going to say Notman. So the two Johns came together, and Laurel Hill was introduced to a new landscape idea that they brought about, and a lot of new burial concepts that were kind of revolutionary in a way at the time. And it became a model of what rural cemeteries would become since this point on. The cemetery was developed and completed between, again, 1836 and 1839 to increase its sort of product of bodies. I don't know the proper way of... I don't know the proper term for the collection is a way to say it, but the residents of the cemetery, in order to improve it, the cemetery organizers, they kind of brought in a lot of Revolutionary War figures and moved them from other cemeteries and other locations to Laurel Hill. So this includes some Continental Congress Secretary Charles Thompson and Declaration of Independence signer Thomas McKean, Philadelphia war veteran and shipbuilder, I can't pronounce the name, Jehu Irie, I don't know if it's it's Jehu, and then his last name is Eyre, so Janu I don't know, and Hugh Mercer, hero of the Battle of Potomac, David, gosh, I should know how to pronounce this right away, but it's Rittenhouse. I don't know why I stuttered on that and put an H in the beginning, but it's David Rittenhouse. He is the first director of the U.S. Mint as well. So a lot of really famous people, or at least at the time, well-known figures and more historical individuals were brought over to Laurel Hill Cemetery in order to just kind of like boost its prestige in a way. I understand nowadays going back to visit more historical landmarks and burial sites. I'm not sure the thought pattern back in the day of, taking old bodies and putting them into another public cemetery. I'm not sure how that really came about, but they got them and they relocated them to Laurel Hill. I don't think I've actually visited any of these grave sites for these people on the ghost investigation tours. I guess there aren't any real ghost stories surrounding them, so it was kind of avoided. But we'll get into some of the places that I went to, and talk about some of the experiences that I had. But just it's kind of like a recap right now of just how it's been established and just where it's coming from in like a design and landscape setup, and just sort of how it became what it is today. The architecture styles that it does utilize is a lot of exotic revivals involving Gothic and classic just feels. It also has a lot of influence from Egyptian, so to speak. It has a lot of marbles and granite. A lot of the statues and tombs also have a lot of cast iron and sandstone. And this just is kind of another draw and appeal to the cemetery itself, having a very rich and like mixed history and styles and influences, and sort of just being another reference to how sort of Philadelphia stands as it is, as a major city, and sort of, especially at that time, like a major port area within America, and just kind of like a pseudo melting pot location for a lot of different cultures and peoples. So it's kind of emulated in a way with the art and the styles that are seen here in the cemetery itself. And today, Laurel Hill stands as a rich representation of both art and historical locations and artifacts. The monuments and rich designs, craftsmanships are just major icons of both the 19th and 20th century America, and the funeral art that surrounds it. Again, there are some really, really amazing sculptures and mausoleums and just really unique tombs and landmarkers that I have not seen visiting other locations and being in other cemeteries. I would definitely say that Laurel Hill stands out from any and all that I've seen, especially more recent ones, like founding wise, where I have like family members and stuff. They're very cookie cutter in a way, especially since it's very expensive for burials. But back in the day, these are a lot of rich people, so they have very ornate and very unique tombstones, headstones, and all that type of stuff. I'm rambling again. I don't know why. I have a new format for how I'm going about with all these recordings. Before I did a lot of recording when it came to like scripts, and it was just a lot of trial and error, and then editing, and then going back, and then editing. And now I'm kind of I have like notes, and I have tabs, and I have articles that I'm reading through, and I kind of like it. I just kind of like, it's sort of just like having an experience and talking. So I'm going to go through that. I apologize if anyone does not approve. You can skip through, I suppose. I'm trying to find the one tab. Okay. So I want to talk about some of the more, I guess, unique individuals and tombs pertaining to Laurel Hill Cemetery, and potentially some of the haunted locations. Again, there's not a whole lot of stories pertaining to the actual haunting and events that you'll have there. I'm going to try to do a quick rundown of what I can remember from that, but a lot of the main figures that I'm going to talk about are in some relation linked to some of the hauntings and paranormal experiences that you could see within Laurel Hill. So first off, without further ado, I'm going to talk about Martha Brennan. So Martha Brennan, she is the daughter of Laurel Hill's caretaker back in 1903, and at 39, she was an unmarried spinster and tended to be she was very shy, she was very timid, more of an introvert in a way. And on Sunday morning in November, she was seen heading towards Laurel Hill train station, which used to be located up on the north side of the cemetery. I don't believe it's there anymore, from what I can remember. I don't think a train really passes through that spot. But later, she was seen walking alone along Kelly Drive, which is a street over in that area. I believe it's the street in the front entrance. She didn't speak to anyone, let anyone know what she was doing. She was, again, very quiet. However, this was the last time that she was ever seen alive. On March of 1904, a fisherman discovered a headless body floating in an ice drift in the Delaware Bay. Martha's brother and aunt traveled to New Jersey to identify the body and confirmed that it was Martha by the dress that she wore. Her remains were buried on the grounds here in Laurel Hill with no marker, as her family was too poor to afford one. So, I guess in a way we're starting off with the sort of true crime. From what I can remember from the tours and investigations that we went on and some information that the guides gave us, this is very much unsolved. From what I can remember, they don't know how she died. The Schkuykill River, I think that's the river that run by it. It's very close. You can actually see it from the sort of like the northwest side of the cemetery. You can see it from like the top. So it is reasonable that somehow her body ended up in that location and then again traveled downstream until it reached the Delaware Bay. So it's plausible how she ended up there. No one really knows how it happened. Was she attacked? Was this some accident near the river she was walking near? Is this like a suicide attempt? No one knows. Why was she headless? Potentially it was either post-mortem or happened, while she was in the river somehow. She was decapitated. I believe there are stories of that happening. I don't know too many when it comes to the head being dislocated. But I guess if you are decaying, things can just kind of pop off. So, yeah. So that's Martha. She's, again, the caretaker's daughter at that time. Sorry, the window is very breezy at the moment, and I'm trying to close that up. So from what I can remember from this location, from Martha's grave, she is buried technically in like a mass area. There's a lot of like markers. There's a lot of names and burials related to one marker. All the Brennans are buried together, as well as the Welsh, Burns, and a few O'Connors. And this dates anywhere from the mid-1800s until the early 1900s. So there's a lot there. And from what I can remember, I believe there are some ghost stories relating to Martha herself. From what I can surmise, it's more or less just like whispers and like very faint voices. I don't believe anyone's really seen like disembodied head apparitions and stuff like that. It's very subtle. A lot of them around the cemetery is very subtle. But especially in relation to Martha, I believe she is the prime, spirit or potential entity that people think maybe around this location of the cemetery. I don't have a map pulled up, but if you go to the cemetery, from what I can remember, southbound train's going by right now, Martha and the Brennan gravesite and grave marker are a bit more towards the north end of the cemetery, like northeast side. So if you hug along, I believe it's there. There's a section marker once you enter the cemetery itself, so it is very easy to navigate around. Again, it's very big, so if you are able to visit there, if you hug the east wall as you enter in, you should be able to find this grave marker. It's underneath a very large tree, from what I can remember. Again, I was always here at night for the most part, so trying to remember how it might be in the daytime is a little hard off the top of my head. So I'm going to move on because this next one's sort of interesting. I don't believe there's any real stories of paranormal stuff relating to this person, but there is some unique, just sort of supernatural things, in a way. And we have Catherine Drinkhouse Smith. I don't know why her name's Drinkhouse, but there you go. So if you come into this location, Laurel Hill, this one is actually very easy to find. If you enter in the gates and you go to the left and you head south, it's one of like the first markers that you'll see on that pathway. It's a very, very tall, like hexagonal shaped monument that has a lot of writing up and down the sides of every single, like all 6 sides of it. And it stands at about like 8 or 9 feet tall. It's very big, but it's right there on the path, and it's one of the first things that you'll see again if you head down south, which is actually across from where Adrian Balboa is technically buried within the cemetery. And it's again striking as you'll see a lot of unusual words written on it. And you'll look at the final resting place of where Drinkhouse Smith and her family is buried. It's again rather remarkable monument because it offers a kind of detail that's rarely seen within grave markers. It has the street addresses of like all the people dead. It has like their favorite quotes, their religious affiliations, and the exact time, like the exact time in which each person on the monument died. Like it is down to like minutes on there. It's very odd. Again, it's very unique. But all 6 members have that, and it's something that makes it stand out. And yet the most interesting thing that a lot of people kind of, I guess, gravitate towards is the fact that Catherine, at least Catherine, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of details from what it seems as though they don't know if her entire family has this. But from what they can sort of surmise, at least Catherine and a good portion of them, all were spiritualists during their life. And spiritualism during this time, particularly in the late 1890s, was like at an all-time high. It was a very popular religious practice and a belief system in which people believed that they could continue on after being dead and live as spirits, and the whole idea of the afterlife kind of expanded during this era. And they believe that there's some sort of way to communicate to the dead. Obviously, if you're a paranormal researcher and you're into this stuff, and you're obviously sort of are if you're listening to this podcast, a lot of seances were used during this time, and this was also sort of a rise of people sort of kind of believing in a way of mediums and more spiritual individuals in order to have conversations. And according to the monument, and I'm not sure if there's any other documentation pertaining to this, but according to the monument, Catherine also allegedly was a medium herself. So given Catherine's strongly held beliefs in an ongoing spiritual life, it would seem as though there might be some potential that she'd be interested in communicating to now live individuals from the other side. So if you do go on these ghost investigations of the cemetery, this monument is definitely one of the key ones that you want to check out. It is definitely one that we went and checked out the first time I was there back in 2017, I believe. And we did spend some time hanging out around that location. I personally didn't feel a whole lot at the spot. I will talk about some of the other locations, but this specific one I didn't really get any vibes from. It was just kind of there. Again, it was interesting, but I didn't really feel too much during the investigation with this location. It was very just sort of bland. I didn't get any like feelings. We didn't get any EVPs from there from both times that we went, because I communicated with the other group during 2018 because I didn't go to that one. But I mean, again, it's interesting, and you definitely want to check it out. And I don't know, maybe perhaps Catherine will talk to you if you happen to hop by. So I'm going to move on, and then I'm going to probably take a short break and then move on to the other ones, because I believe we have about like 3 or 4 more people to talk about. And next up, we have Maurice Fagan. So Maurice died on February 4th, 1899. And if you don't believe in ghosts, okay, let me reword this. if you believe in ghosts that don't necessarily haunt the place that they were buried, you may prefer that they be around the place that they died. And it's kind of like a grab all in a way, especially with Mercer here, because if you believe that the cemetery is the place that could be haunted, then you kind of are right. And then if you also believe that where they died is where they haunt, you'd kind of be right, because Mercer Fegan sort of falls into both categories. After serving in the Civil War and being honored twice for his services and during the conflict, Mercer was plagued with a horrible pain in his head, and doctors at the time diagnosed him with a very vague illness, just very off the shelf, back in the day, doctors and medicine were not very up to par with a lot of the medical treatment that they should be. And today, some wonder if he may have been stricken with migraines or perhaps some form of PTSD. Either way, he was in a lot of pain, a lot of intense pain, and it drove Fagin and his family it sort of drove them away. And despite seamlessly getting his life back together and getting it back on track after his military service, Fagin continued to be tormented with this pain just throughout his life. He was not getting treatment. There was no real cure, I guess, at the time. And again, he was misdiagnosed in a lot of ways. So he was just going through his life just very miserable. And this is when he realized that no medical intervention was helping. He sought to take matters into his own hands. In a letter to his younger sister, he explained that he would soon rest among their departed family members at Laurel Hill Cemetery. Sadly, he was right. Maurice went to his family plot, which is located in the northeast section of the Laurel Hill Cemetery, and he ended his life with a gunshot to the head, likely an attempt to put an end to the pain once and for all. So Mercer, he is a location, again, that you'll go on during these tours, and he's, oddly enough, very close in location to where Martha and her family plot is. I believe he's just a little bit further north. And again, he very much fits like all the check marks when it comes to a haunted location and just paranormal experience, like a potential one. He had a very traumatic life. He had a lot of pain. It was a very intense and a very significant death. He committed suicide. And he did it at his family grave, which he was then buried like underneath where he killed himself. So it just fits all these check boxes. And again, we went there during the investigation, and we had an EVP session here as well. I don't believe we got any response from what I can remember. I'd have to go back and check some of the recordings. From what I can remember, the second group that went here back in 2018, because we took different paths, I believe they may have had something happen here. I don't believe it was an EVP, but I believe someone did hear what they believed at the time to be whispers. I would have to reach out to the group and get the full story, because again, this was all through passing. We don't technically catalog all of the evidence that we get, just because there's so many of us and there's hours worth of it. So they did potentially hear something. Mercer, again, is sort of the most possible ghost haunting within all of the cemetery, from what I can understand. His story definitely relates best with an investigation and a potentially haunted location. So again, if you are there and you are taking the tour, they will most likely take you here depending on who you get for the tour guide. And if not, then if you want to check them out, just ask to go on that side. And if you're able to go there on your own, again, he's up in the northeast section, just a little bit more north from Martha Brennan and her family plot. A lot of these stories and a lot of the evidence that I'm going to talk about is definitely on that side of the cemetery. And then the second half, I'm going to talk about the second time that I went to the cemetery and had a bit more personal experiences. And I don't mean like heavy things, nothing like extreme in any way. But the cemetery was definitely a bit more, I guess, active from what I can understand. And we did go on a different route that took us more into like the deeper section of the cemetery, which was interesting. But the first time we did, we definitely hugged the street walls of the cemetery the first time, and again we went to all these grave sites, which you can go on, and they're definitely very unique. And I'm rambling again because you guys don't want to listen to that. You want to listen to the stories and history of this place. So I'm gonna take again a quick break, grab some water and stuff, and then we're going to talk about Henrietta Greta. So I'll see you then. Okie doke, guys. So we are back after a little pause on my end, and we're going to be continuing on with some of the stories in relation to Laurel Hill and just some of the more, I guess, famous people or stories and like things that are related to potential spirits there on the location itself. Now, there's no 100% proof with any of these, obviously, because like any location, but here particularly, because again, stated earlier in this whole podcast itself, there's no solid real recordings of like evidence and just stories of people's experiences that I can find both on the internet and on blogs and just other sources that I've been combing through this time. It's unfortunate, especially since this location is just so fun and so unique in so many ways. But I feel like these stories are still very adequate in their way of sort of shaping the narrative and sort of giving you an idea of what potentially you could sort of see in some of these ghost stories and some of the potential spirits that are living there. So I'm rambling, and I'm going to continue on with our list of, I guess, hosts that are currently living there. And with that, we are going to be talking about Henrietta Garrett. So Henrietta was a young and relatively poor woman. She was caught. Well, let me recap this. So she's a very poor individual, and she caught the eye of a very rich individual here in the Philadelphia area by the name of Walter Garrett. He owned a snuff tobacco company and was at that time it gave him a lot of wealth and amassed a very large profit. So the two married, and by all accounts, they were very happy, and there was a very good couple, very good marriage, until Walter died, and that happiness sort of shifted and became turmoil. So in his will, Walter left the $6 million of his name and the estate in Harriet's name, and we may never actually know why Harriet didn't make a complete will of her own at the time of her death. But by the time that she did die, about roughly 30 years after her husband, she had only accounted a very small percentage of what would then, at current time, amount to about $17 million of fortune due to the company and due to the assets that she acquired from her husband. So she got a lot of profit, but she never really passed it on, or not at least completely. Harriet had the misfortune of dying in November of 1930, approximately 1 year after the Great Depression, despite people from all over the world beginning to, climb back up and slowly get their lives back together, and claiming some kind of at this time there was still a lot of turmoil, and a lot of people were still very much desperate and still trying to get a grasp of everything. And a lot of people came forward claiming to have some sort of relationship to Harriet, either being through family, being a friend, or just being a long-lost relative of some sort. And in this effort, they were trying to claim some sort of inheritance on her end. In the end, this is a lot. In the end, about 26,000 people had come forth with some sort of story, one way or the other. And eventually a special court had to be put together just to get through all these hearings. However, one way or another, a rumor got out that Harriet had been buried with her will and with that, the key to the wealth. This sparked a very public outcry calling for for people to exhume her tomb. And Laurel Hill felt a lot of pressure for this, and they put a 24-hour guard, an armed guard, around her grave so that nobody tried to dig her up themselves. And you can actually see a poster. I'll probably link to this either on Instagram or Twitter so you guys can see it. There is a photo of this guard just chilling there right next to Harriet's tomb, or grave in this case. And it's just very bizarre and just like, oh, this is my job. Eventually, Harriet was exhumed at a later date, and the entire process was photographed and filmed so that lawyers and other individuals could very much prove that the will was either there or not there when they finally exhumed her body. It wasn't. So after the media, a large circus, and all that, like, just legal issues and tornado effect, it lasted for about 20 years, and it was determined that 2 of Harriet's cousins would get $2 million. The rest of the money went elsewhere. And legal hearings from all the courts and stuff just sort of wrapped up in a tight but somewhat loose bow. It's very weird. It's a very bizarre story. But a lot of that money just kind of poof, just went elsewhere. I'm assuming it went to more public stuff from what I can understand, but a lot of these stories don't go into a whole lot of detail on that. Now, apparently, in some of these accounts, if you are interested in the paranormal and you are interested in this sort of stuff, the removal of someone from their grave and the place in which they are buried is not exactly the most, positive thing to do for a spirit, or just anyone, I guess, in general. But if you are into this whole community and just understanding of things, that, this could be a potential way for a spirit to come back, for some more unfinished business to kind of stir up. And all this, like, drama and like, chaos and confusion and sadness, both towards the end of Harriet's life and then after her life. It's just, it's going to be a melting pot of more just issues and emotion and stress. So potentially, because again, there are really no major stories in relations to paranormal stuff, this could potentially stir up a spirit of sorts. From what I can understand, that Harriet isn't exactly, she had no relation to anyone after the fact, so there is really no cause for her to get all riled up. Hopefully she isn't, like, at peace. Hopefully this did not affect her in any way. But as we're going to talk about with the next person, not everyone they didn't exactly get off well, as well, I should say, as Harriet. Because the next person that I want to talk about, someone who I actually, I believe we did an EVP session out by his tomb. It's actually probably one of the more interesting locations on the cemetery, in my opinion. If I were to go back there again, I would definitely swing by this spot because I've only been here once. It's sort of like on a ledge carved into a hill type thing. It's on one of the pathways in the middle. So there's a lot of layers and a lot of different, like, levels and paths and just really beautiful mausoleums, and it's just a really cool spot. But this individual that we will be talking about today is Dr. Elwood Kirby, a guy who looks like a mix of the Pringles Man and Teddy Roosevelt. I don't know why, but he just does. I don't know why. I'm looking at his photo right now. I will post that on Twitter as well. But Dr. Elwood Kirby. So Kirby is another potential spirit that possibly didn't have the chance to stay at rest or at peace as long as he could have. So Elwood Kirby made his living both treating and practicing medicine. He was a doctor. He assumed a great deal of wealth during his life, which made him both a very wealthy and very charitable man during his relatively long life. He grew to be a somewhat old man. And he was also known to offer medical care to the elite of Philadelphia, but also on the side, a lot of pro bono work, no charge to individuals. But, again, still sort of remaining to the elite. Pro bono is pro bono, but, it'd be nice if it was for other individuals. So ironically enough, he did die in his sleep from a heart attack on Christmas night of all nights in 1935, I believe is the exact date. I don't think I wrote down the year in my notes, but I believe it was 1935 because it was close to when Harriet died. And left behind a small fortune which was divided amongst his family members and a few favorited charities. He was later buried in his family mausoleum, where he rests silently for, get this, about 10 weeks. So yeah, he did not get a long rest like Harriet and all the others. He had some drama pretty quick. So a group of vandals got the idea that Kirby had been buried sort of like a Egyptian pharaoh, with a lot of his gold and jewels and some of his riches stored away in his grave. Again, he's buried in a family mausoleum, so it's a lot more possible and a little bit easier to break into because you don't have to dig up a grave. So between Kirby and his wealth and the story of Harriet's grave, which at this time was going on, again, she was exhumed later after her death, about, I believe, 20 or 30 years? I'm just going to scroll back through my notes just to double check so I got this right. Eventually, okay, so she died in the 1930s, and I don't have any notes on when she was exhumed exactly. Okay, about 20 years later. Okay, so during this time, Harriet's whole debacle is going on, and this other rich individual is buried not too far away from her in the same cemetery. So it's sort of a mixture between the rumors around Kirby's tomb and the stories around Harriet Garrett, which we talked about again. And it's, very much possible, again, this is all happening right after the Great Depression, that some vandals took this as a potential opportunity. So they waited until the dark of night with very little traffic, and they scaled the cement walls that surround the cemetery. They broke into Kirby's mausoleum and dragged a very heavy casket outside and pried it open. Upon finding absolutely no gems, like no jewelry, no gems, no cash or whatever they thought was in there, they decided to strip the corpse of Kirby. So yeah, they didn't exactly grave rob him. They just kind of robbed him. They took all his clothes, which was very odd. They left him naked, thinking that all the treasure must be within the... They think it was all on the body, like on him, not within the tomb. And by the end, all they found was a pair of $10 cufflinks. And that's what they stole. I don't think they took the clothing, but they took the cufflinks and they left everything sprout about. So Dr. Earl Kirby was taken to a receiving vault, which he was then promptly dressed with new clothing and placed back into a new casket, all before the press had the chance to come in and photograph the scene. So there is no photos of this, unfortunately. It would be kind of cool. I mean, it's still very horrible and it'd be weird to see the body, but it would be at least somewhat cool to see like the scene of it without the body, because but from what I can tell during the investigation that went on, they actually somewhat reenacted the area, like they plotted it out for us, and it was a pretty they drug that pretty far from the mausoleum, not massive distances, but far enough that I would be like, why'd you drag it out all the way here? Just put it on the floor in the mausoleum and pry it open. Don't put all this effort to bring it out into the open. But they did, and that's what they did. And so, they were able to cover this up. They didn't cover it up, I should say. I should correct myself. I'm just rambling on because my notes are much more bullet pointy this time around. But the cemetery was able to get ahead of the story and really put a shine of makeup on top of the whole incident. So they got ahead of all this before anyone had the choice of, exclusive stories and photographs. If there was anyone who might have a few choice words, however, with his attackers, it might be Dr. Kirby, who apparently during our investigation and during some of the tours that you can go on at Laurel Hill, Dr. Kirby is apparently one of the spirits that you could potentially run into. He is said to sort of roam around the area of his mausoleum. I don't believe people have technically seen full apparitions or anything. I don't think there are too many full apparitions here at Laurel Hill. However, there are stories of, seeing shadows, seeing figures of some sort walking around. Out in front of Kirby's mausoleum, there is like a slight cement path that goes through. Again, it's like kind of on a hill, but where his mausoleum is located, there is a direct walking path that you could go on. This is where the tomb and the casket was laid out, where the vandals were stripping Kirby of his clothing and valuables. And this sort of area is definitely where a lot of the reports come in from Kirby himself. There's a few reports of people walking and, again, figures, but nothing too severe, nothing too extreme. Again, Laurel Hill doesn't have too many major stories in it. A lot of them are just very run-of-the-mill paranormal things, such as, disembodied voices, disembodied sounds, people, hearing things in the distance, whistling. And again, figures are a big thing. It's a very dark location. It's a very large location. And, there is a street that cuts around it. It's the city, it's Philadelphia, so there are streets. But once you get not even that far, once you get 10 feet or so from the gates, you're going into darkness. You need flashlights while you're here. You need some sort of light to guide your path. You cannot see very well in this location. Even on a very beautiful clear sky, we needed a lot of flashlights during our investigation. And so yeah, those are the stories, and I want to talk about some of the more personal experiences that I've had and some of the reports that we sort of went through during our investigations. I'm going to keep it relatively brief and vague because, again, I don't know all the details. One of the investigations was a year back and the other was 2 years back, and I have notes, but they're still just so scrambled, and I don't have all of them because the entire group is kind of split between 40 people. And so I'm going to keep it sort of more personal for this ending part. But I wanted to talk about some of the major figures because a lot of them I did visit their graves, and I will talk about some of the accounts from there. And I just wanted to get some of the others out there just to sort of give you a feel of the cemetery and give you a feel of what you can kind of expect moving forward. So without further ado, we shall get to that because I'm sure you're tired of listening to me talk about history and rambling on. And you want to get to the ghosts. So here we go. Ever thought of having your very own podcast and not really sure where to start? Well, Anchor is the easiest way to make all of those podcasting dreams a reality. Anchor gives you everything that you need in one place, which you can use easily and right away on your phone or computer. Creative tools allowing you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds the absolute best, and they'll even distribute your podcast for you, which, believe me, was a lifesaver on my own part, so that it can be heard everywhere across multiple different platforms such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and even more. You can also earn some money off of your podcast through sponsorships that Anchor will help provide for you with no minimum listener base, so you can start right away. In order to start your very own podcast, be sure to download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm or to download the Anchor app both on Android and Apple. I hope to welcome you guys to the Anchor community. Okay, so moving on to the more personal stories and some of the paranormal stuff that we are going to talk about. From what I can understand from the list of people and graves that we've talked about currently on this list and through this episode, a lot of them, from what I can understand, a lot of them I have personally been to either during the first investigation or during on the second one, or just, personal trips there. And I think there's just one or two that I may have not gone to. I don't entirely remember going to Harriet's grave. Hers, kind of blends together with a few of the others in the location. About 3 or 4 of the ones we've talked about have very similar graves. And for the most part, most of them are located all relatively in the same spot, from what I can, guess from my memory and viewing the map of the cemetery itself. A lot of them are sort of in like the northern / like northeast section of the cemetery, not a whole lot that dip down. And so, I mean, obviously, when we went on the investigations, the first time I was up there, we pretty much stuck to that end. And then on the second investigation, I kind of looped around a bit more. So a lot of these stories are just going to kind of be a mix of both of them, or both trips, I should say. And I do have audio recordings. I don't particularly have too many that I think, are anything. Because I want to point this out, and I believe I talked about it in the very beginning when I was just describing what Laurel Hill is and where it is. So if anyone's gone on a paranormal investigation of any sort, you know that you have to, or if you know and you have a good understanding of this, you know that you have to go in at some level of skepticism. I know it's going to be hard for anyone who's like a firm believer and just like without a doubt has to be this. And even just people who are firm skeptics, you can't sway too far on either side of the spectrum. I know it's hard to do for a lot of people, but I personally found that this is a good way for me to, handle a lot of this stuff. I myself am a very, scientific-based individual, but I have a lot of interest when it comes to these sort of things. So it's a good way for me to blend both of these together, and that translates very well into investigations because, again, you need to have some sort of foot on both ends of the line. And with this, going into the investigation, we all had to account for the fact that we're in the city. I know Laurel Hill is a little bit out of the way, but there is 2 major, not major, but like relatively busy and like 2-lane to 3-lane, or 2-lane to 4-lane type roads that surround it. There's neighborhoods nearby. Again, it's the city. You're going to hear sirens. You're going to hear helicopters. You're going to hear cop cars going by. You're going to hear a lot of things. And especially on the first investigation, because again, on the second one, we went a little deeper into the cemetery. The first one, we kind of stuck towards the end, like the edge of it, up in the north section. And during the first one, we definitely had to rule out a lot of times during our recordings. We had to point out that, hey, there's a siren going by. I believe during one of the, I think it was like our third sit-down EVP session, we started and like 2 minutes in, not close to us, granted, but close enough that we could hear it. A car alarm just started going off. And keep in mind, we started at 7, I believe. And at this point, I believe it was closer to like 9:30 at night. So there's just a car alarm going off in the distance, like very like slight in the recording. It's a lot louder in person. But you could definitely hear it, and we had to point that out. We're like, all right, there's a car alarm going off, keep in mind just how you could probably hear a train going off right now in the distance of this recording. I believe it's the southbound by the sound of it, and it's the express line because it didn't do a stop. But yeah, so a lot of that had to be taken into account, and a lot of that is just a lot of the white noise that you'll hear in the back of recordings that you just have to really... It's hard once you go back and decipher the EVP sessions that we have, because again, we had a lot. And me personally, especially during the second one, I just let audio run. So I have long swaths of just like noise, like us walking, us talking, just just having it run, because I didn't have any video cameras to really work with, so I just let the recording run almost the entire time. And so yeah, that's sort of how I handled it, and that's sort of how most of the group handled it. You're very respectful, even if you don't believe, and even if you don't think there is anything there. But with the Laurel Hill situation, I personally think that there may be something there. I don't know for fact, so don't take everything I say with a grain of salt, please. Because I'm not an expert at all. I've only been to this location a handful of times. I enjoy every time I went, but I'm not an expert. I'm not in any part of this field. I'm not even an expert in recording podcasts, so believe me when I say that I'm not an expert when it comes to paranormal investigations. But all I can tell you is through my own personal experience and what I and others in the group with me during both times, what we, again, experienced on these trips. And again, we went to a lot of the locations that we talked about in the past two little segments that I recorded. And I can't fully remember where each recording session took place for each one. I know we did a recording session for each one. But the significant ones that I got experiences from were not, from what I can tell, not from these spots, except from the more recent one that I can remember. There's two, but the one that actually pertains to the paranormal stuff is with Dr. Kirby's tube. So this was during the second investigation, and I believe this was towards the end. It was either towards the end of the middle, towards like the very end of like wrapping up the investigation. It was later in the night, around 10 or so, and we left, I believe, around a little before 11. And you start the thing off. We're there with a guide, so we don't get lost in the cemetery, and we have a few minutes of just just talking about the section. They don't talk about the individual, at least the guide we had this time. They don't talk about the individual to start the sessions and stuff. They talk about just the spot and just sort of like, the history of this section of the cemetery, just to give you like a feel. And then we'll do like a session, then we'll just do this. They'll give you like the name, but after the fact, they'll talk about like how they died, when they died, where they're from, and then we'll do like another second little added on section to the EVP sessions, which is, just, I guess, par for the course for the most part. And that's kind of the practice that we did for most of the different sessions at different graves / mausoleums / tomb, whatever. There's a lot of different spots in this place. And with Dr. Kirby, it wasn't something that, again, I have a lot of audio I still need to comb over, so I don't know. But from what I can grasp, while sitting at those sessions, I guess standing is a better word, but with him, it was weird. I was talking with one of my team members, and I believe she's like 2 years younger than me or so. We met during this investigation, and we were talking on the way to Dr. Kirby's mausoleum. And we were talking about, we felt fine, but we didn't feel, all together there for some reason. We couldn't explain it, and we were both, sort of just like walking along. We just kind of like ended up next to one another. Most of the group was ahead of us. There's a few people lingering behind, and we just felt a little off for some reason. We didn't know anything about the tomb that we were going to. We didn't know what our next spot was. We were just walking through, and it was a great location too. I love that spot where we were when we were starting to talk. It doesn't give off weird vibes. That's not what we felt. I would say the best way to describe it is we felt very, I guess, drained. And if anyone's, if you've done athletic type stuff, what it feels like your body has just had a lot. it didn't feel like that. It didn't feel like physical fatigue, and it didn't feel as though, if you've been very depressed or you've just gone through a lot of hardship, it's not like emotional fatigue either. It just felt like a mixture of being on like the verge of needing to go to bed, mixed with like I just overloaded on a bunch of information for like a test, and like I studied for hours upon hours and hours, and my brain is just like, give me a moment to breathe. It felt like a mix of those, but like it still kind of was very unique. Like it wasn't like, we weren't tired physically. We weren't like in need of anything. We had water during the investigation. We ate before. Like it wasn't anything like normal in a way. And I felt this before at different spots, and I'm going to get into that, especially with Laurel Hill, because it comes back into play. But me and this girl, we both felt this at this time. And then it led into the Kirby EVP session, because during that session, this was one of the ones I didn't partake in, because again, the group's very large. We split into like groups of, I believe in the second one we had about 20 people, and we split into teams of 10, but we also had a guide for each of us, so it was around 11 to 12 per group that split off into different parts of the cemetery. And with our group, it was very active. A lot of people wanted to ask questions, so we spaced them out accordingly. But, not everyone asks, and sometimes you just, decide to sit out and just listen. So that's what I did for the Kirby one, because again, I wasn't really feeling all together there. And I don't know what it was, and this is something that I'll talk about too after this, but it wasn't like the sense of being watched, that feeling you get. And a lot of paranormal investigators and people with this community will say like, oh, I felt like I was being watched. I felt like there was someone in the room with me. It wasn't entirely like that, but it didn't feel like it felt like something was up, but it didn't feel like someone was watching us. If that makes sense. It just kind of felt like it's hard to explain, and I'm not trying to like play this up for anyone, because again, I'm not a firm believer and I'm not a firm skeptic, but from what I can understand and from what I've like researched and experienced on my own, I would say I'm personally somewhat, I don't want to say the word like sensitive, because I don't know the right word to describe it. I definitely have some sort of wavelength or something when it comes to these sort of things. It's not strong, granted, but it's something there, something just personal about me. I would never go into saying like, oh, I'm a medium, I do stuff. And I'm not making fun of anyone who does that or believes that or is that. I'm just saying, for me personally, I don't personally subscribe to me being any of these descriptions. But when I go to certain locations like this, and even ones that I don't know the history of, and I don't know for a fact if anyone's haunted or had ghost stories here, I'll get these weird feelings, and I get these weird like heaviness. Again, that tired sensation that I can't really pinpoint to being a sense of fatigue that I'm used to. And then now this, which is new, because I've had the sensation of being watched before. I've had the sensation of feeling as though someone's there at different locations and different points in my life, but I've never had this, where it just feels like something's not right entirely. But it doesn't feel threatening, and it doesn't feel like inviting either. It's just there. And I couldn't really pinpoint it down, and it was just the entire time we were near Kirby's tomb, before the guide that we had went into detail about who Kirby was, and then we started the second session. This was the entire time I felt it. It didn't go away afterwards. It didn't start because of this information. It started once we got to that general area, which again is up towards like the northern section. It's kind of carved into the hill. And it was just that sort of like whole little area until we left that I just felt like something wasn't entirely all together. I don't know if that means me. I don't know if that means the spot. I don't know. Because again, I don't subscribe to being an expert in this at any means. And it just was very weird. I'm going to try to comb through all the EVP sessions for these things, and I'm going to be posting them up on Twitter. I wish I had the edited versions that I had in the past. I have all the raw audio. It's just some of the edited audio I lost. And by edited, I mean like cropped down to the sections in which potential noises are heard. And there is one that I definitely want to repost, and that's the one I'm going to talk about next. But I'm going to try to go through the ones that I have for this section and see if I can get them up for you guys. They'll be up on my Twitter. They'll be up on Instagram and potentially YouTube as well. If you guys want to check out the Realm of Unknown YouTube, I'm going to try to post a lot of these things on there. Maybe just make a big, long thing and just let you guys listen. But yeah, so that's Dr. Kirby and that whole little area. But I'm going to move on because these next two are probably the more prominent ones, I should say. The more like very unexplained events that happened to me here at Laurel Hill. And I guess I'll save the real good one for the end, and I'm going to try to get the audio for that one. But the next thing that personally happened to me, this was during the first investigation back 2 years ago. And at this point, this was my first, like, quote-unquote official paranormal investigation. I've been to different spots before. I've gone with friends before. I've gone on tours. I've visited places. But I've never, had an investigation. I've never done it with a group. I've never actually sat down. I didn't go at night. All that sort of, like, all the kit and caboodle. This was my first time ever doing it. And at this point, I did know, again, that I felt some sort of connection with all these sort of things. I was a bit more in tuned in some way. And I wasn't trying to play it up. I wasn't trying to, like, actively look or, like, experience things. I went into this investigation with the mindset of just be there. Just be at this location, take it in, go for the ride, learn the ropes if you can, but just be here and enjoy it and experience it. Just be there. And I think with that mindset, I don't want to say like I opened up more, but I think I did in a way. And this was during one of the stops that we had, and it wasn't on the list of the more infamous locations that I read off on and gave a brief history about. This was a mass grave. So I know what you're thinking. It's not like a dark, like, oh my God type thing. This is just a grave of a lot of doctors, okay? I don't know all their names because there's a lot. And this, again, 2 years ago. I'm not going to remember. But these doctors went to Virginia and participated in trying to help individuals who were dying from, I believe, the yellow fever. And at this time, this was way back. This is way, way back in time. And all these doctors either died while down there or died shortly afterwards. And they were memorialized all together in this mass grave of doctors and a few nurses, I believe, as well. They're all volunteer workers trying to help individuals. So we sat down with the tour guides that we had at the time. And this was a much smaller group. I believe, including the guides, we had about 7 people. I think I was the only guide. No, there's one other guy. Our group's is very female heavy. Again, we were at Temple, so Temple's a very female centric school. I don't know why that helped. Well, it will for the recordings, just so you know. I don't pop up a whole lot in those old ones. So if you're like, there's a bunch of girls talking, and it's like, where's the guy I've been listening to? My voice pops up like 4 or 5 times in that first session, like that whole investigation. So yeah, that only goes into play for that part. But during this investigation and during this EVP session that we had, the mass grave, the way it's shaped is like a giant obelisk type thing. It's not like a perfect one. It's not like the Washington Memorial in DC or like an Egyptian one. It has like layers to it, but it has like a obelisk shape at the very top. So it's very big, and we all set our phones down, and like the people who had like EVP recorders, we all set them down on the grave itself. They were all, close by. They're all lined up. Lined up within a few inches or so. We wanted to do it this way so that if noises were made, they would all relatively be close to one another. So there's no people talking further apart. And you might hear it weird if you're whispering. Maybe like one picks it up and the other ones don't. So you're like, oh, this was something. We wanted to rule out as many things as possible, and keeping them close by was a good way for us because, again, this is a very open, it's essentially like a massive park in the city. So noise is bouncing everywhere. If we could keep all the recorders relatively close together, that helps narrow down, where certain noises are coming from, and just kind of like rules out others that, might pop up. So during this, I was standing on the north side of the tomb, or the grave, sorry, and the rest of the team and everyone, we're all kind of like wrapped around it. No one was on the east side. I know I'm like giving directional stuff that might help, but it does for me, at least, for recounting these stories, because we came up from the south, and the team kind of like wrapped around the left-hand side, so like the west side, and we just kind of like all wrapped around, and I just so happened to be on the north. And at this point, we're just going through the EVP session, we're talking, and I just feel, again, very off, very weird. So I just start walking around it very, very delicately because I don't want to make any noise. And I even pause for a moment to like address during the EVPs that, hey, I'm about to walk around. But it doesn't really pop up from what I can remember. And because of this, I'm walking around the big it's a big obelisk because, again, it's a mass grave. It's a little bit raised off the ground. And I start walking from the north. I go around the right-hand side towards where we came. And I step a little bit away from the monument itself. It's all stone. I believe it's marble. And I take a few steps away, and then I take a few steps closer, and then I take a few steps away, and then I walk up to it. And then I wait for the EVP session to stop completely. And before we move on, before we do anything, because again, I'm new to all this, I'm very nervous. I don't want to be like, oh, I'm showing off, ha ha ha, like something's happened to me, ha ha. I didn't want to be like that, but I wanted to address it so that it was noted. The entire time we were at this grave specifically, because this was further into the investigation, it was not the first one we went to, I felt very, very warm. Like a very comforting set of warm, as if you were like wrapped into a blanket and you're just like nuzzled up very comfortably on the couch in that position that just feels so right. I felt like that. I just felt like that the closer I got to the stone itself. I could press like my hand against the stone and it felt relatively warm. I kid you not. I've never experienced this. I've never experienced it since because I didn't go back to that grave itself during the second investigation, so I couldn't check it out, and then I couldn't find it when I went on personal trips, but it was just so weird. And granted, at the time of like going on these investigations, it's not a warm temperature, especially during the first investigation. We went like mid-November. It was cold out. We were in jackets. I believe at the time of this one, it was like the high 40s outside. So it wasn't like freezing cold, but it wasn't comfortably warm either. And I was in like a lighter jacket. There was some, or not jacket, like sweatshirt type thing. I prefer sweatshirts. Believe me, if you see my wardrobe, I have like 20 sweatshirts. But, we're all like somewhat bundled up. We have like jeans and sweatpants on. We're not, we're not warm. None of us are really warm. You could see your breath during certain points of the night as time passed on. So by all means, I shouldn't feel this level of warm. I didn't when I was going there. I didn't later on in the investigation. It was only during this moment around this specific grave with this specific stone. Because while I was walking around and I stepped further away from it, I got closer to other graves. I got closer to other obelisks in that vicinity. And those I didn't feel warmer when I got closer. I felt warmer only closer to this specific mass grave obelisk. The mass grave with all the doctors and nurses. For some reason, to the touch, it felt warm, it felt comforting, and I don't know why. I addressed this to the group. I said, hey, guys, I don't know how to explain this. I've never, this is my first time here. I just want to briefly mention the fact that I feel a weird sensation of warmth the closer I get in proximity to this grave. When we were recording, I wanted to test it out, so I walked around a bit, and as I get up close to this thing, I feel just warm. Everything around me feels warm. I feel warm. Like, it's not an internal type thing. It feels external. And they they gave me a weird look. I was with some of like the team leaders of the group, and again, we had 2 tour guides who were very experienced there. They all kind of gave me like a very puzzled look, and they believed me because we're all in this situation. But a few of them tested it out. Some of them pressed their hands against the stone. Unfortunately, we didn't have any way of like recording temperature. Obviously, we could check our phones. We knew it was cold out. But we couldn't test the stone itself. And I've gone back, I've run through scenarios in my head, and I've talked to other individuals being like, hey, could you maybe explain this to me? And all the situations we've gone through were like, we can't understand why I would feel warm around that specific stone. In my like logical mind, I go to like, oh, well, maybe, that area was warmed up. Maybe, it's a stone. Maybe it somehow absorbed the heat and retained it. But like, it's late November, and we're there at like 8:30, 9 o'clock at this point. The sun's set, around like 6. These stones don't have enough time or heat to even, absorb enough to feel warm. So there's no way that they're going to feel warm after the sunset, hours after, it didn't make any sense. And then we try to think like, well, maybe there's a bunch of people around it, so maybe it heated it up then. But then it was just like, well, I never felt it during other sections of the tour. Maybe, maybe it's my clothing. Maybe I'm just dressed warm. Again, I felt colder in a car heading over. Like, it didn't add up. And I just pointed that out, and it was very odd. And it started the trend of very odd things happening at Laurel Hill. And that night, during the first investigation, when this happened, the rest of that night went pretty good. It went very, average. During a few moments, we did pause because we did at times feel as though, someone was moving in the distance. We felt as though we heard something out there. And keep in mind, this is a very big area. It's like, it's quote unquote a wooded area, essentially. So there's a lot of warnings of like, hey, watch out for groundhogs, watch out for, smaller wildlife. So that could very easily explain the noise that we were hearing. So besides that, and besides like maybe hearing like a whisper or two in the distance that we like paused to look for, nothing really came about. So we wrap that one up, we head back, and we sit there. We're the first group back, so we sit down and start going over our EVPs. So I'm on my phone, I have my headphones plugged in, the volume like maxed out, and I get to one section. This was during, I believe, another one of the mass grave areas that we sat by. During the first investigation, we sat by, I believe, 3 of them. Each one was like a family area, one was just the doctor one, and the other one, I believe, was for just like random patrons or something. Like they just kind of got like combined together. They all like went in on a plot or something. I'd have to go back and check. It wasn't like a famous spot. It wasn't have this like rich history around it or anything. So it didn't stand out. I wasn't expecting anything to pop up, especially on like my phone. I believe the phone that I had at that time was a 5S, the iPhone, or 5C maybe. I forget which one it was. Again, this was 2 years back, so it's a little older, and it's just weird. It's a phone. It doesn't have like the best recording, but it was decent enough. And again, we kept all of our phones lined up, all paired together. We're not far apart from one another, so the questions can all be heard very clearly on each other's phones. And I got something. It's not perfect, and I have to comb back through and like get that audio segment again. But it was something. I listened to it like 4 or 5 times. And I was like, what is this? Like, this doesn't sound like a car. This doesn't sound like one of us talking, because we're much louder, we're much more clear. And like, it doesn't sound like anyone's whispering. We're too far inwards to be like weird sounds. It's not like a dog, it's not a plane, it's nothing distinguishable. And then I jack up the audio and I listen harder and I listen harder. And then I played on repeat, and I'm listening, and I'm like, this sounds like someone's humming. And I was just like, whoa. Because, it takes a moment, you like really listen in. I've never really listened to audio from EVP sections none that I recorded. This was my first time. And I was like, what the hell? Because, we're all listening, and this was maybe like 20 minutes into listening through things. I'm like, what the hell is this sound? Like, it sounds like someone's trying to sing. But, like, we were just out there, and again, there's only like 6 or 7 of us, and none of us are singing. None of us are making these sorts of sounds. We're all quiet, we're asking questions, and we're talking clearly. So I pass it around to my friends, and I pass it around to the team members, and then the tour guides listened to it, and they were like, everyone was like, this sounds like some sort of song or like melody. It sounds like, we all agreed that it was some sort of tune. Some thought it was music, some thought it was like someone singing in the distance. I personally believe it was someone humming, and a few others believe that too. One of the guides in the other groups listened to it, and she thought that it was whistling in the distance. Because it was very much, to me at least, it was very clear. Like, it had a rhythm, it had like a melody to it, and as you're listening to it, it's like da 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 da. Like that's not what it was. Don't think that's what it was. I will post this somewhere of the actual audio, but it was like that. It was very short, very brief. But it had a structure and a melody as if someone was singing along to something. To me, it sounded like a female, personally. It was a much higher tone, but it just had that very, like, someone just walking along, like, very careless, very just, like, in the moment type singing. And it reminded me of how my sister would do it when she was younger and just, like, sing along to something. It felt like a younger woman of some sort to me. And obviously, again, I'm no expert. I don't know all this stuff. But it was something that we picked up on, and it was something that was very unique. And I don't believe the other group didn't get a whole lot from what I can remember from this investigation, but for this EVP session, no one else got that audio. Like, our devices are side by side, all right next to one another. We're all in the same location, and I believe there was about 5 audio devices of different sorts, either phones or EVP recorders, during this particular investigation and this exact EVP session. They're all right next to one another. They're like phone to phone on this grave, and everyone's like standing still and asking questions. There's no reason as to why, like, even if it was just a sound that was out there, like, my phone is not the best recorder, and other people in the group had the same phone, like the same version phone. And so why didn't they pick up on it? Why did the phone next to me, which was a better, newer version of the phone, get nothing of that during that like portion of our recording? Because most of us have the same length. We all start at the same time. But my recording was the only one that picked up on this da 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 melody that you can hear very briefly in between 2 of the questions. It had nothing to do with the questions that were being asked. Most of them were very direct and very brief. And none of them had to do with music. I don't believe any of the people we even visited and any of the locations involved music of any sort. So I have no idea where this came from, what it means, what it pertains to, who it might have been, or what it was. Because again, I can't explain the sound to a sound that I would know or recognize. The closest thing I can equate it to is a sort of melody. And to me, that attributes to more of like a person. It's more like a personal thing. So to me, those are like the big things with Laurel Hill. During the second investigation, again, I felt more, more like, I don't want to say energy type stuff. It was more of an experience rather than things happening. Again, I felt very tired and weak with other individuals, even though like we didn't feel like a recognizable level of fatigue. During later sections of the investigation, we crossed over a bridge, and there were stories that people did see like entities on the bridge. It has a very eerie vibe. And believe me, it has an eerie vibe. I have never felt this, even in like places like Eastern State. I don't get this at all. I didn't even move on with the group for a section. Like, they were meandering around close by, and they were going through another EVP session. And me and another one or 2 people just kind of like weren't part of it. We were just kind of like exploring that new section of the cemetery. And I just went right back to the bridge. It's not like a cross bridge. It's not like a cover bridge. It's just like a bridge that connects the 2 sections of the cemetery. And I just stared out over it, and I was just like, I can't shake this feeling of just like unease. Like, and it wasn't threatening. It wasn't like, oh God, there's something here. It's just like, what is this? Like, why do I feel this way? And why can't I recognize it? Why can't I shake it? Like, what is this sensation that I'm feeling of just like, I need to look out here. I need to like continue to observe as if something will happen, but I know it might not. But like at the same time, I feel as like it should. It's just such a weird feeling that I can't explain, and I can't attribute it to any other location that I've ever been to. Like any normal place, I've never felt this with like eerie locations that I have been to that either I know should be haunted or might be haunted. This is the only place, the only time, because I've gone there other times. This is the only time that I was here at Laurel Hill. This was last November, November of 2018. And the entire time I felt drained. I felt somewhat uneasy. I felt on edge at certain points. And I just don't know what it was or why it was. But other people on the tour, again, they agreed in certain sections of it. Certain people were like, yeah, I just feel, really tired. I feel really drained. But, like, I took a nap before I came here. I ate. Like, I shouldn't feel this way. I just do. I don't know. Maybe it's they would like play it off, some of them. Others like agreed with me, but they were like, I didn't want to mention anything either. But yeah, like I feel kind of off. And I was like, yeah, like it's off. Like you don't feel bad, right? And they're like, yeah, I don't feel uncomfortable. I don't feel anything threatening in any way. But like I don't feel good either. And I was like, yeah, like it's something weird. It's something like I don't want to say unnatural, because again that just kind of makes it feel like, oh, it's this spooky unexplainable thing, and it might be, for all I know. I don't know. But to me personally, like I can't explain it. I cannot explain why I felt this way this one time for about 4 hours. The moment I left this place, I felt like perfectly fine, like snap of the finger, perfectly fine. I like the second I crossed over from the gate of this location, I felt, fine. Like nothing happened. I was comfortable again. I had the energy again. I felt away. Like it was just such a turn, like flip of the dime. And I don't know why. I don't know how to explain it. But Laurel Hill has given me that weird sensation. From the stories that I've looked into, I don't see any that have similar experiences. Again, some of the things the tour guides have mentioned, some of the stories that you may come across do entail individuals from specific graves, like how I had with Dr. Kirby. And a lot of the people that we've talked about in the earlier sections of this, those are, the graves that you would have some of these stories surrounded by. People hear disembodied voices and people talking, sort of how, like, we got the recording of someone maybe humming in the distance. Keep in mind, though, people do see figures and maybe potential shadows in the distance. But keep in mind, you're in a cemetery, and they do tell us this when you go in. You're in a cemetery, and this happens, believe me, from personal experience. You have a lot of different shaped tombstones. Again, there's obelisks in the distance. It's a very, very hilly area. So things are at different heights, at different portions of the cemetery. They have trees, they have foliage. There's a lot there. So it's so easy to mistaken a darker stone out in the distance as potentially maybe being someone out there. We definitely had that a few times, and we had to shine our flashlights out just to double check. I can attest for that. I can also attest for someone actually being there and getting that sensation and being freaked the hell out, because during one of the EVP sessions on the second tour that we had, we sat down and we had a tour guide. And I believe she was the groundskeeper also at the time. And we were there in our group. We're all sitting down. We're all recording. And most of our lights were off just so that it gets dark. And, like, in the distance, you just see someone, like, not running, not, like, walking, but, like, a light jaunt. And they're just, like, moving through the tombstones. And I'm facing this person. Most people have their backs to the spot, but they start picking up on it too by, like, the noises and stuff. You can hear, like, the leaves crunching and the twigs snapping underneath. It's so surreal. It's a good ending, but, like, I'm just like, what the hell is happening? I'm like, we just started. Like, we've been here for 2 minutes. What the hell? Like, it's just this dark looming figure, like, coming at you in a cemetery. And I'm like, okay, it's either nothing at all. It is either a spirit of, like, some dark figure moving towards me who's, like, almost 6 feet tall. Or it's an actual person in the cemetery. And then I'm just like, this is a huge cemetery. There could be anyone in here. And I'm like, oh God, like, is there just some dude running around here? because then, like, your mind starts racing, and people start talking around. You're like, wait, do you hear that too? And they're like, yeah, I hear this. Like, and then we're all looking over. Turns out our actual tour guide was late. And he's like, he even, like, joking, he's like, like, I saw you guys sitting down, I didn't want to disturb you, so I went around. And I'm like, what the hell? Like everyone agreed. We're like, dude, did not help at all. Like, call out. We'll start over the EVP session. Don't creepily walk in the distance around us and just, like, pop up during the session. He, like, came up from behind and was just like, yeah, I saw you guys. And I'm like, oh my God, I had a heart attack thinking, okay, I'm either insane or a spirit is coming at us, full apparition style, or some rando is just walking around while we're out and about. Like, none of those situations are good. It was a good way to, like, I guess, break the tension and in the beginning, because, again, we just started. We literally walked from the gate to this spot, sat down, and this was, like, immediately. It was a good way to experience, like, a jump scare without an actual jump scare happening. But yeah, I had a lot of fun at Laurel Hill, and, we had good times. We had heart attack inducing times, and we had a lot of weird supernaturally potential times. But for the most part, that's it. Again, a lot of Laurel Hill, and from my own experiences, this resonates pretty well. A lot of Laurel Hill's experiences that you'll see there are not... Oh my God, the northbound train is going by real loud right now. A lot of the Laurel Hill experiences you'll get there, you're not going to get crazy over-the-top hauntings. From what I can find and what I can attest for, a lot of what you're going to see is very mundane, individual things, either specific ghosts or just spirits in general. It's a large cemetery, so you're going to hear maybe some voices, some whispers, maybe see some movement out and about, maybe an orb here or there in your photograph, but nothing crazy, because Laurel Hill is a really chill spot, and I feel like a lot of the spirits are like that as well. If they are there, I feel like they're pretty relaxed. I would be too if I was buried there. But if you ever are in Philadelphia and you ever do want to check out a location that might be haunted, Laurel Hill Cemetery is just right outside. Like, you're right there in the city. It's about a mile or so out from the, like, prime location of the city itself. And they have a website. You can, get tours. They have a lot of events. And go experience it for yourself if you're here. Check it out. But that's all we have for today. It's a very unorthodox video, or not video. I'm still used to recording for YouTube. Very unorthodox podcast. So I hope you guys enjoy, though. And if you want to learn more about Laurel Hill, or you want me to maybe revisit the topic, if you have your own personal stories, I record on Anchor. So if you are somehow this far into the episode, I doubt a lot of you are, because I rambled on for a while. If you are this far and you want to, talk about your own personal stories, you can send me a voice memo here on Anchor, and I can actually put it into future episodes if you do approve. So maybe we can get something going on that. But again, for the most part, we're done for that whole story. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys, want to check out more. And if you want to visit a lot of the more, like, post material that I will be uploading, you can check it out on Twitter and Instagram, as well as YouTube in the further future, all at Realm of Unknown. You can get me at, I believe, Realm of Unknown on Twitter may have underscores in it, but don't quote me on that, because I don't know all my handles really well. But Realm of Unknown, it has my logo on it, so you can get me on Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube to check me out there. And if you have your own stories and you want to listen to some stuff that for me to read over, you can email me at realmofunknown@gmail.com. And if you guys want to listen to more episodes and stay in tune for future ones, you can check us out here on Anchor or Apple iTunes, Spotify, pretty much everywhere now, because Anchor's been so awesome with helping me get things uploaded. So I'm pretty much everywhere. Podbean, Breaker, God, there's a few. But check me out. So I'm going to sign off because I'm rambling. I hope you guys are having a great week so far. And until the next episode, I shall see you guys. And I hope you guys all remain very happy and enjoying the springtime. So don't forget to be spooky.